English podcast, conversation practice for beginners.
Real question, Mike. When you think right now, like when a thought just appears in your head, what language is it in?
English, I guess. I don't really think about it.
Exactly. You don't think about it. That's the whole point. Fluency isn't about knowing more words. It's about thinking without choosing a language first.
Okay, but that sounds like something that just happens naturally. Can you actually train that?
You can, and it doesn't require hours of study. It starts with the smallest moments of your day, things you're already doing.
Like what?
That's exactly what we're getting into today. 4 techniques, simple ones. And there's one in particular, I call it Micro Narration, that changed how one of my students experienced English completely. I'll tell you his story later because what he said after a few weeks, I still think about it.
Oh, before we get into this, if you're new here, subscribe. New episode every day. This one especially, you're gonna want to finish it.
And hit the like button, it really helps. Okay, let's talk about that extra step. Okay, so before we get into the techniques, I want to try something first. I'm going to describe 3 situations, real situations, things that happen to people who are learning English. And Mike, I just want you to react naturally. Don't overthink it.
Okay, I can do that.
All right, situation 1. Imagine you're at work or maybe at a social event and someone walks up to you, a native speaker, and they say very casually, "Hey, so what do you do for fun?"
Okay, simple enough.
And let's say you've been studying English for a few years. You understand the question perfectly. You even know what you want to say, but then nothing comes out. Or it comes out slow. Really slow, and the person is just standing there waiting.
Yeah, okay. I feel that actually. Like, your brain knows the answer, but it's like the words are stuck somewhere.
Exactly. So what do you think is happening in that moment?
I mean, my first instinct would be they just need more vocabulary, right? Like they know what they want to say in their language, they just don't have the words yet in English.
Interesting. Hold that thought.
Okay.
All right, situation 2. Different scenario. Someone has been watching English content for months. Netflix series, YouTube videos, podcasts, all in English, no subtitles. And they understand almost everything. Like, genuinely, they follow the plot, they catch the jokes, they get the cultural references.
Okay, that's actually impressive.
It is. But then, one day, a friend asks them, just casually, "Hey, what's that show about?" And they open their mouth and the words don't come. They can't explain it. They understood every episode, but they can't describe the story in English.
Wait, really? How does that happen? Like, if you understood it, you should be able to talk about it, right?
That's what most people think.
I mean, it seems logical. You watch something, you understand it, you can talk about it. That's how it works.
Keep that thought too. We're coming back to it.
You're collecting our wrong answers?
I'm collecting your instincts. There's a difference.
Okay.
Last one, situation 3. This one's a little different. Someone has an opportunity to speak English in a real situation. Maybe they're traveling, or there's a coworker who speaks English, or they're at a store and the person at the counter doesn't speak their language, and they know enough English to get through it, but they don't try. They look for someone to translate, or they use their phone, or they just avoid the situation completely.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do that. And honestly, it makes sense, right? If you're not confident, why put yourself in an uncomfortable situation?
It does make sense on the surface.
I mean, nobody wants to freeze in front of someone, especially a stranger.
Totally. But here's a question I want you to hold on to, and we're not answering it yet. When someone avoids that situation, what is their brain actually learning?
I hadn't thought about it that way.
Good. So, 3 situations. A simple question that freezes someone, a person who understands everything but can't produce anything, and someone who avoids speaking altogether. We're going to come back to all 3 of these, but first, let's look at what's actually going on underneath. Okay, so let's go back to those 3 situations, because I don't think the reactions we described were wrong. They actually make a lot of sense, and that's exactly what makes them interesting.
What do you mean?
I mean, the way people react in those moments feels completely logical. That's why almost everyone reacts the same way. Let's start with the first one, the simple question. Someone asks, "What do you do for fun?" and the person freezes.
Right.
What do most people think when that happens?
I mean, probably that they need to study more. Like, I don't know enough words yet. I need more vocabulary.
Exactly. That's the most common reaction. My English isn't good enough yet. And it feels logical, right? You couldn't answer, so you must be missing something.
Yeah, that's a very natural conclusion.
But here's what's actually happening in that moment. The person isn't missing the words. They know what they want to say. The problem is their brain is trying to build the sentence in their first language first and then translate it, word by word.
Oh, so there's like a line, a cue in the brain.
Exactly. And by the time the translation is ready, the conversation has already moved on. The other person is already saying something else, or there's this awkward silence and the moment is gone.
Yeah, that actually sounds like something a lot of people experience, and I bet most of them think the solution is just study harder.
Study more, learn more words, take another course. And so they do, and the freeze still happens, because the real problem was never the vocabulary.
Hold on to that. Let's go to situation 2. The person who watches everything in English understands almost all of it, but can't explain a simple story to a friend.
Right. That one surprised me a little. What do you think most people assume about that?
Probably the same thing, like, I understand it, but I can't speak it yet. So I just need more time, more exposure. Keep watching, keep listening, and eventually it'll come.
Yes, and that sounds completely reasonable. Input leads to output, right?
That's kind of how most things work.
It is, except with language, passive exposure and active thinking are not the same thing. They use different parts of the brain. You can train your ears for years and still have an untrained mouth, an untrained mind.
So understanding is one muscle and producing is another.
Completely different muscle, and most people only train one of them. They consume, and they never practice the output, so the output stays slow or silent.
That's actually kind of frustrating when you think about it, because those people are putting in real effort, watching shows, listening to podcasts, and they feel like they're learning, and they are, just not the part they actually need.
That's a really good way to put it. Okay, situation 3. The person who avoids speaking in real situations, travels and finds a translator, has a coworker who speaks English and never talks to them directly. What's the common reaction there?
I mean, avoidance makes sense, right? If you know you're going to freeze, why put yourself through that? It protects your confidence.
It feels like protection, and emotionally, yes, it is, in the short term. But let's think about what the brain is actually learning when someone avoids that situation every time.
I guess it learns to avoid it?
It learns that English is dangerous, uncomfortable, something to be careful around.
And the more you avoid, the more the brain confirms that belief. Every time you hand the phone to someone else, every time you choose the translator, the brain files it. English, not safe, not ready.
So the avoidance itself becomes the problem.
The brain learns from what you do, not from what you intend to do. You can intend to speak English all you want, but if you keep avoiding it, that's the signal the brain receives.
Okay, so we have 3 completely different situations. But now that I'm hearing all 3 together,
What do you notice?
it's kind of the same problem in all 3. The person thinks the issue is their English, not enough words, not enough exposure, not enough confidence. But it sounds like the English was kind of there all along.
And this is where most people go wrong. They keep trying to fix the symptom. More vocabulary, more input, more preparation. But the actual issue is underneath all of that. And it's not about how much English you know. It's about how your brain has learned to treat English.
So what's the actual issue?
That's exactly what we're getting into next. Okay, so here's what's actually happening in all 3 of those situations. And I want you to really sit with this for a second, because once you see it, you can't unsee it.
All right, I'm listening.
The truth is, in every single one of those situations, the person had enough English. They had the words, they had the grammar, they had the exposure. What they didn't have was a brain that was trained to use English automatically. Their brain was still treating English like a subject, like something you study, not something you think in.
Wait, so the English was there, the brain just didn't know what to do with it?
Exactly. Think about it this way. When you speak your first language, you don't think about speaking, you just speak. The words come before you decide to find them. That's not talent. That's not a gift. That's just what happens when a language becomes a habit in your brain.
So fluency isn't about knowing more, it's about the brain treating the language differently.
It's a mental habit. And like any habit, it doesn't come from studying. It comes from repetition, from using the language in real moments, even small ones, even private ones.
Okay, that actually shifts something. Because I think most people believe fluency is on the other side of enough knowledge. Like, once I know enough, it'll flow.
And that's the exact belief that keeps people stuck. Because you can always find more to learn. There's always another word, another grammar rule, another level. And the brain stays in study mode indefinitely.
So the problem isn't the English at all.
The English was always there. The habit wasn't. I had a student a few years ago. This was an online class, still morning time for me. He was actually quite advanced. He could read articles in English, watch videos without subtitles, write decent emails. By every traditional measure, his English was good.
Okay.
And one day, early in the lesson, I asked him something very simple, just to warm up. I said, "So, what did you do this weekend?"
A classic warm-up question.
The most basic one. And he went silent. Not for 1 second, for almost 10 seconds. I could see it. He knew the answer. He had done things that weekend. He had the words, but his brain was running the full translation process in real time. Portuguese first, then English, then check if it sounds right, then speak.
That's exhausting just to describe.
And by the time his answer came out, it was technically correct, but the moment felt heavy, uncomfortable, like something had gone wrong. And nothing had gone wrong. He just hadn't trained his brain to skip that middle step.
The translation step.
So after class, I gave him one small exercise. Not a vocabulary list, not a grammar worksheet. I told him, just start narrating tiny moments of your day in English, in your head.
Not out loud, not in a journal. Just when you wake up, think, I need to make coffee. When you check your phone, think, I should reply to that. Small things, private things. Nobody hears it.
So just think in English during regular life.
During regular life. And a few weeks later, he came back to class and he said, and I chose these words carefully, now when I think about things, sometimes the first thought comes in English.
The first thought, not the translation. The first thought.
He didn't study more. He didn't learn new words. He just started using the English that was already there in the small, quiet moments of his day. And his brain started filing it differently, not as a subject, as a language.
Okay. So that person froze at, what do you do for fun? It wasn't a vocabulary problem, it was a habit problem. The brain had never practiced producing English in a real spontaneous moment, only in a controlled study environment.
Right. And when the person understood everything but couldn't explain the show, same thing. Trained input, untrained output. Two different habits. And the person who kept avoiding real situations, every time they avoided, they were reinforcing the habit of treating English as something dangerous, something for later, something you do when you're ready.
And you're never ready if you keep waiting to be ready.
That's exactly it.
Okay, so knowing this changes how I look at those three situations completely. Like, the fix isn't more English, the fix is training the brain to use the English that's already there.
And that's what the second half of this episode is about. I want to give you 4 specific ways to do that. 4 things that are small enough to actually do, not in a classroom, not with a textbook, during your actual day. And when we come back to those 3 situations after this, I think they're going to look very different.
Yeah, I think they will too.
Before we get into the 4 techniques, I want to mention something quickly. Everything we talked about today, training your brain to react automatically, using English in real situations, that's exactly what I built Travel with Rachel around. It's a survival guide for traveling in English, not vocabulary lists, actual dialogues, real situations, airport, hotel, restaurant, emergencies. You practice the responses until they become automatic, until your brain stops translating and just reacts.
And I've seen students of Rachel's go from completely freezing at a check-in counter to just handling it naturally. That shift is real.
The link is in the description. First one. Okay, let's get into the techniques. Let's go back to those 3 situations, same scenes, but now you know what's actually happening underneath. Let's see if they feel different.
All right, I'm ready.
Situation 1. Someone asks you, what do you do for fun? And before, we said the brain freezes because it's trying to translate a full sentence first. So instead of trying to build a perfect answer from scratch, what if you already had a few short responses ready, things you've practiced enough that they come automatically?
Like preloaded phrases.
Exactly. Native speakers do this all the time. They're not building every sentence from zero. They have automatic responses, short ones, that buy the brain a second and keep the conversation moving. So let's try it. I'll ask you the same question. Don't think, just respond with something short and natural.
Okay.
What do you do for fun?
Honestly, I like being outdoors, and I've been getting into cooking lately.
Perfect. Notice what you did. You didn't translate, you didn't freeze, you just answered. And here's why that worked. Short, honest, simple. 2 sentences, no performance. And from a native speaker's perspective, that answer sounds completely natural,
confident even.
It felt different, less like a test.
Because you weren't trying to be perfect, you were just responding. And that's technique 2, automatic responses. Short phrases that your brain knows so well they come before the thinking does. Things like, that makes sense. Good point. I never thought about that. I'm not sure about that. You practice them until they're automatic, and suddenly conversations feel less like exams.
Nodding. Before, I would have tried to say something impressive and frozen halfway through. Now it's like, just say something real and keep going.
That's it. Okay, situation 2. The person who watched everything in English understood everything, but couldn't explain the show to a friend. Remember what the problem was?
Trained input, untrained output. They never practiced producing, only receiving.
Right. So the fix isn't more watching, it's training the output. And the simplest way to do that is what I call the 60-second English monologue. You pick something small from your day and you just talk about it. In your head, out loud in private, whatever feels comfortable, just produce. So, Mike, tell me what you had for breakfast this morning. 60 seconds. Go.
Okay. This morning, I woke up a little late, so I didn't have much time. I made some coffee, just black, no sugar, and I had some toast with peanut butter. That's pretty much it, nothing exciting. I've been trying to eat better, but mornings are hard.
That was great, genuinely. And notice, you didn't stop to find words, you just talked. That's exactly what the monologue trains. And the more you do it, the more your brain learns that producing English is normal, not scary, not a performance, just talking.
And I could do that about anything, what I did today, what I'm planning, what I watched last night.
Anything. The topic doesn't matter. The output is the point. Because now, when someone asks you to explain something, the muscle is already warm.
Before, I would have just said, oh, it's complicated, and changed the subject.
Most people do. Okay, last one. Situation 3. The person who avoids real situations because they know they'll freeze. And before, we said every time they avoid, the brain learns that English is something to be careful around. So, how do you fix avoidance without throwing yourself into uncomfortable situations?
You practice before the situation exists.
Exactly. That's technique 1, micro narration. You narrate small moments of your day in English. In your head, nobody hears it, there's no pressure. I need to check my email. I'm running late. Where did I leave my phone? Let's just do this now. Tiny thoughts, private ones, but every time you do it, your brain gets one more data point that English is normal, usable, safe.
So by the time a real situation comes, a check-in counter, a coworker, a stranger on a trip, the brain has already practiced that territory.
You've already been there 100 times in small moments. And there's one more piece to this, technique 3, thinking in images. Because a big part of why translation happens is that people hear a word in English and immediately look for the equivalent in their language. But if you can attach the word directly to an image, the translation step disappears.
How do you practice that?
You take a word, say airport, and instead of thinking airport equals aeroporto, you just picture it, the sliding doors, the screens with flight numbers, the lines, the smell of coffee from the kiosks. You see it, not the word for it. Same with suitcase, boarding pass, security line, gate. Each one an image, not a translation.
So the word becomes a door to the thing, not a door to another word.
Yeah, that's a really good way to say that. Yeah, exactly that.
You know what's interesting? In the beginning of this episode, all three of those situations felt like English problems, like the person just needed more English. But now, they all have a completely different solution, and none of the solutions are study more.
None of them. They're all about training the brain to use what's already there in real moments, small ones.
Okay, I feel like I understand the logic now, but let me ask the practical question. How do I actually start? Like tomorrow morning, what do I do?
Good question. And before I answer that, I want to point out the most common mistake people make right after they understand this concept, because there's a trap.
Already?
Already. Most people hear what we talked about today and think, okay, I need to study smarter. Let me make better vocabulary lists. Let me find phrases online and memorize them. And that feels productive, it looks like work, but it's still study mode. Your brain is still filing it as information, not as language.
So the trap is turning the solution into another study habit.
Exactly. You can memorize "that makes sense" as a phrase on a flashcard and still freeze when someone says something to you in real life because you never used it in a real moment. You just stored it.
Your brain stores it as information, not as language.
Right. So the rule is small and real beats big and studied every time. A thought you had in English while making coffee counts more than 30 minutes of vocabulary review.
Okay, so practically, where do I start?
Start with micro narration. Just your morning. Tomorrow when you wake up, before you pick up your phone, before anything, have one thought in English. One. I'm tired. It's cold today. I need coffee. That's it. One thought. And then the next day, two thoughts. You're not building a study routine. You're building a mental reflex.
That's actually manageable because I think people hear think in English all day and it sounds exhausting.
It is exhausting if you try to do it all at once. That's another trap, going all in on day 1 and burning out by day 3. The brain doesn't learn from intensity. It learns from consistency.
Small and often beats big and once.
Always. Okay, let me test you on something. New situation. You're at a coffee shop. The person next to you looks at your laptop and says, "Oh, are you working on something interesting?"
Yeah, kind of. I've been working on a project about habits and how people learn things. It's been pretty interesting, actually.
Perfect. You didn't freeze, you didn't try to impress, you just answered. And you used kind of, which is exactly what a native speaker would say there. Natural hedge keeps the conversation open.
I didn't even think about that. It just came out.
Because short and honest always works. That's technique 2 in real life. You don't need a perfect answer, you need a real one. And then, once you're comfortable with micro narration and automatic responses, you add the 60-second monologue. Pick a topic every evening. What I did today, what I want to do this weekend, what I think about something I read. 60 seconds. Out loud if you can, in your head if you can't. The topic doesn't matter, the output does.
And the image thinking, that one fits in everywhere, right? Like anytime I see a word, I just picture the thing instead of translating it.
Anytime, at the supermarket, on a walk, reading anything in English. See the word, see the thing. Skip the translation. And here's the anchor phrase I want you to take from today. Simple English used often is more powerful than complex English used rarely.
Simple English used often is more powerful than complex English used rarely. So, going back to those 3 situations from the beginning of the episode, the person who froze at a simple question, the person who couldn't explain the show, the person who avoided real situations, they all had the same starting point?
Same starting point. And the same path forward. Small moments, consistent use. Real situations, even tiny ones. The brain doesn't need perfect conditions to learn. It needs repetition.
It doesn't care about your goals, it cares about repetition.
Exactly.
You know what's interesting? I came into this episode thinking the problem was always the English. Like someone freezes, someone can't explain something, someone avoids a situation, and the obvious answer is they just need more English, more study, more time.
And now?
Now I think the English was almost never the real problem. The problem was what the brain learned to do with the English, or what it never learned to do.
That shift right there, that's the whole episode. And it's not just about English, honestly. It's about how the brain learns anything. A language, a skill, a habit. You don't become fluent by knowing more. You become fluent by using what you know, consistently in small moments, before you feel ready.
Before you feel ready, that's the part most people skip.
Because waiting to feel ready feels responsible. It feels like preparation. But the brain doesn't get ready from waiting. It gets ready from doing. Fluency is a mental habit. And like every habit, it starts before you feel ready.
So the goal isn't to study more. The goal is to think differently. Starting today. Starting with one thought in English tomorrow morning.
One thought. That's enough to begin.
After a beat, silent progress beats loud talent.
Say more.
The person who quietly narrates their day in English, who practices in private in small moments with no audience, that person is building something real, something automatic. And one day they open their mouth in a real situation and the words just come. Not because they studied the hardest, because they practiced the most honestly.
That's it. That's the whole thing. One last thing. If today's episode made sense to you, and you want to take this exact principle into a real situation, Travel with Rachel was built for that. You won't just read about airports and hotels, you'll practice the actual responses until they come automatically, until the translation step is just gone.
Seriously, link is in the description. First one, if you've been putting off a trip because of the English part, that's the thing that changes it. And hey, if you're still here, do us a favor. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't yet, and comment one thing. Tell us which of those 3 situations at the beginning hit closest to home. The freeze, the gap between listening and speaking, or the avoidance. We read everything.
We really do. And next episode, if you're serious about English but inconsistent, please watch this. If you've ever started strong and then just stopped, that one's for you.
That one's going to be good.
See you there.
See you there.